And I think it's that cultural link with the past which I find so interesting. And you can actually decipher through the weapons themselves, the individuals. And we talked about serendipity. This is a sword manufactured in Lahore, a very fine wood sword. Again, the panels dictate or depict rather the avatars of Vishnu. So what we call the 24 avatars or 24 incarnations of Vishnu. This sword I purchased from a dealer in London. After I purchased it, simply because I thought it was a nice, interesting sword, I noticed that on this panel here, I don't know if you can see who that is.
Yes, I can see that. It's Guru Nanak Dev Ji.
This is Guru Nanak Dev Ji. So this is, as far as I'm aware.
Let me just turn that around so that our viewers can see it as well. It's actually this one here. So would this be used in battle then, would it?
It's more of a parade piece, right, or a ceremonial or durbar piece, would have been worn in the Sikh courts. Because of the gold work actually goes down the length of the blade, and that's something that you really wouldn't find on a battle-hardened sword.
Right.
But the fact is, serendipity, the piece found me. No one knew Guru Nanak was there. It's the second known sword in the world that I'm aware of, which depicts Guru Nanak on a sword.
So, I have to ask you one question regarding the values of these. When someone puts a value to them, I mean, is it collectors? I mean, would you sell that, is what I'm coming to?
I think the obligation in terms of ownership and how you preserve these is a question all collectors have to face at some point in their life. If their family are not interested, my children are not interested, for instance, then you have to really decide what you want to do with it. Donate it to a museum, sell it as a collection to a museum or to individuals. So I think the price is really dependent upon your situation at the time. And if you're buying something at auction, it's market value. Right. So if there's two collectors in the room, they will push the price.
So in the collection, I didn't think you'd have a double-barrel gun. So which area or which time is this from?
Well, this is an interesting pistol. I found it at an international arms fair. I was just intrigued by the gold Damascene work on the pistol. I picked it up and I noticed it had a inlaid gold inscription, what we call Denishar work. There was a friend of mine who happened to be an Arab in the room, and I asked him if he could read it for me. So he read it. I got straight onto the internet. I managed to track down who it was and I purchased the gun. And actually it belongs to Maharaj Ganwar Zawahar Singh Ji Sahib, and he was actually a general who worked under Gulab Singh. So he actually spread the Sikh territories through to Ladakh and as far as Tibet, where he carried the Khalsa flag. And he was killed in battle in the mid-19th century. And actually, he was a Rajput. So at 16, he joined the Sikh forces after he killed his cousin over a land dispute. He was looking for a patron. He entered the Sikh forces. He became and befriended Maharaja Ranjit Singh himself. He became one of his favourites at the Sikh courts. Right. So this pistol actually was adorned and worn at the Sikh courts during the time of Maharaja Ranjit Singh.
Really? I was really surprised. I think people don't know enough about guns when it comes to Maharaja Ranjit Singh, or even after Guru Gobind Singh's time, because this type of pistol, I always think of those two people sort of shooting at each other over somebody in the UK.
I mean, the Indian firearms was started really with black powder and cannons through the Mughals, up way through the ages. But what's interesting about this is made by Charles Lancaster. And you can see an inscription here that says 151 New Bond Street, London. So he had agents who were selling guns to the Middle East or to the Eastern markets and then inscribed with the owner's name. Right. And the quality of this gun, 16-bore percussion pistol, really screams quality. And it's something that you would associate with a general of that standing. Right. And from the serial number on the gun, we're able to trace the date of manufacture to the Charles Lancaster records, which perfectly match the reign or the ascendancy of this general in the Sikh forces. So I think the provenance is there, it's rock solid.
Okay, let's move on to the last section. You've got a few of these chakras that we all know about. Is there anything in a particular one have you purchased these in auction as well?
These were found really all over the place, antiques markets, auctions and so forth. Some are made of woods, some are not made of woods. Some bear some type of dot punch inscriptions in Devanagari, which we haven't been able to decipher. This one for some reason, has silver and gold leaf adorned on it. So it would have been some type of puja, some type of worship going on with this piece, which is very interesting. Again, I don't know enough about why they would do that, but I can only assume that it was some kind of puja that was happening with these pieces. And really, these pieces have an aerofoil on them, which is very much like an airplane wing to give it lift during flight, almost like a frisbee. And if you think about the aerodynamics and the mechanics and their knowledge of flight at that time, it's quite amazing, really, that they produced a weapon that they knew would travel a fair distance at a fair speed to produce maximum damage.
It's only now that I've realised it looks like a frisbee, because before I just thought they were just flat,
No,
but they're not.
They have this curvature.
They are, yes.
And that's the amazing thing. But again, it was a weapon adopted by the Sikhs, which was used predominantly by the Hindus at the time in the 17th century, and even beyond that, times of in mythological Vishnu times. So it's a weapon that was adopted by the Sikhs.
Okay. Before we move on to your last, article that you brought today, these arrows. Then let's just talk about this particular one.
Right. This is what we call a quiver, and actually this was given by the 9 sovereign Sikh chiefs to Lord Dalhousie in 1851 when he became Governor General of Punjab, I think in 1846, and the Sikh chiefs would have presented this to him. That explains the immaculate condition. The fact it's never been worn. It was a presentation piece. This is Lord Dalhousie's actual stamp mark, or his wax seal, which he would adorn all the gifts that he was given when during his time as Governor General in India. And the sequins, the thread work, the kamai work on it is just amazing. So
the Dalhousie family, do they still have articles of Sikhs?
No, interestingly, the Dalhousie family was seated in a country estate in Scotland called Coulsdon. And over the years, I think in 1898 there was one sale, and in 1990 Sotheby's sold off the entire contents. And this was actually acquired in 1990 from the Dalhousie sale itself. Right. So the provenance is there, it's rock solid, it has a Dalhousie wax seal on it, and it was given, and Dalhousie kept immaculate records. So this was actually presented by the 9 sovereign Sikh chiefs, which explains its condition, and it's the fact that it's really survived in that condition, because Dalhousie really did look after the objects he was given.
Well, even now I think it's a beautiful piece anyway. It's quite surprising that it's lasted that long. Okay, so let's go to the last article that you have, which is this armour, a coat. Is there a name for this?
Yeah, this is what we call a coat of mail. And mail denotes obviously the small rings that are put together. Now this coat was probably manufactured in Lahore, probably around about 1760 to 1780 at a guess, looking at the clasps, which are made of silver. And it was clearly made for a high-ranking individual. And if we just spin it round here and have a look at it, this is what we call a bishop's mantle, which you find in Europe. So you tend to find these on bishops and so on, smocks in the church, and that's why we call it a bishop's mantle. But all this brass interlink work and what we call Ganga Jamna work, which is like the flowing of the Ganges, and this is what we call Ganga Jamna work. But this particular coat is quite interesting simply because the way it's manufactured. It's actually got one row of what we call butted links, where the links are put together, and the second row is actually put together in the same way but covers a spot weld.
It's quite heavy.
Yeah, and the reason it's heavy is because of this spot weld in between the links. And this type of manufacture of having a row of butted links, which are links put together like that, and another row with a spot weld in the join, is quite unique. And we showed this to someone at the Wallace Collection, a good friend of mine called David Edge, who was a mail specialist, an Indian mail, and it's the only type of coat of that manufacture in the world that he's ever come across. And I think that gives it the extra strength that, if you were in battle or it was being pulled or an arrow was being fired, those extra welded links would separate this coat and obviously preserve the wearer.
It will definitely protect you from a
Absolutely.
sword blow then?
Well, it would hurt if you got hit with a sword blow. I'm not sure if the mail would stand up to heavy, sustained combat. But again, if you look at the piece itself, it was clearly made for extremely high-ranking Sikh.
It looks like a designer-made.
it feels very silken if you look at it. It's very highly tailored.
Yes, yes.
And I think, you know, when you consider there could be in excess of 900,000 links in this coat, it must have taken almost a year and a bit to make.
Sukhbinder, we've come to the end of our interview, and I want to thank you for allowing us to share, you know, the articles that you've, you know, collected over the last 20 years. But my last question to you would be this: where do you think your collection would be in 50 years' time?
I like to think, and it's a question I've been toying with of recent years as I get older, that some shape or form it was preserved as an entire collection, be it in a museum or in someone's private hands, but someone who would appreciate it. And I think that's the key thing. If you appreciate the objects, you're there to preserve them, and you revere these objects for what they were and the people that wore them, I think then, you know, I can rest assured that it will be in good hands for the future. Okay, well, I hope that wish of yours comes true. So I want to thank Sukhbinder for, you know, doing this interview in London with me. So I hope to see you on some other shows, as we discussed before. So let's just do Fateh Sanji on this. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.